This podcast is hosted on podhome.fm, the most modern podcast hosting platform. Podhome offers unlimited episodes and podcasts, and unlimited use of Podhome AI, which generates transcripts, clips, chapters, title suggestions, show notes, and much more. And all of that for just $15.99 a month or $185 per year. That's a steal. So go to podhome.fm and start your 30-day trial now. And enjoy the show with Joe.
Happening live from the Asylum Studios, deep in the bowels of Southwest Texas. It's the Joe Rooz Show. The show where we talk about anything and everything. Where nothing is sacred, nothing is watered down, and nothing is PC.
Alrighty, hey folks, this is Joe Rooz, and it is great to be with you once again, transmitting live at the Asylum, and of course, as always, doing the very best we can to bring you the best quality talk radio we can muster without all the bluster. Welcome to the Joe Rooz Show. Alrighty, well, we got a treat for you today, folks. You know, California has 61 names on the governor's ballot. It's a state that's drowning in homelessness, utility hikes, housing collapse, political distrust. And tonight, we have one outsider who says he has the practical solutions that Sacramento refuses to deliver on. Tonight, we're going to be talking with gubernatorial candidate Thunder Parley, and we'll find out what his solutions are to these problems. But of course, before we get into that, we're going to take care of some of our usual housekeeping stuff. So folks, if you would, please head over to our website, joerooz.com. That's joerooz.com. Maybe the banner will pop up. There it goes. All right, joerooz.com. And when you get over there, head over to that contact section. It's up in the right corner of the website. Just open up that little pancake. You'll find the contact form. Fill it out, send it on over to us. Let us know whatever's on your heart, whatever's on your mind, any questions, comments, cares, or concerns that you might have. Maybe you have a complaint. I mean, honestly, you shouldn't have any complaints, but if you do, you can send them to us right there. That's fine. No problem. We'll give them the just attention they deserve. And maybe you have a suggestion for a guest or maybe a topic for discussion on the show. Let us know. We would love to hear from you guys on that. Also, if you're like me, maybe you don't like using the web forms. You know, those stupid CAPTCHA things drive me flipping crazy. So, you know, I can't stand matching the crosswalk 19 times just for them to tell me, no, you missed one. So that's why we have an email address. So just email us at info@joerooz.com. That's info@joerooz.com. Also, novel idea, by the way, folks. Novel idea. Maybe once-in-a-lifetime idea, thought. Use the comment section. It's open on Rumble. It's open on YouTube. Use a comment section. Send it on over to us. Let us know what you think. We would love to hear from you guys, get more feedback, and get some suggestions. So plenty of ways to reach us. Very, very important to do so. Also, please don't forget that this is a live show weeknight, 7 p.m. Central Time, 8 p.m. Eastern Time. All right? Remember that. 7 p.m. Central, 8 p.m. Eastern. And then, of course, we also have our Sunday show every Sunday afternoon at 2 p.m. Central Time. Very, very important. Check them all out. We got some great quality guests during the week. We got some great discussions on Sundays. Check out the shows. Very, very, very important. Also, another important thing that often gets overlooked is a very simple word called an algorithm. All right? Algorithm is very, very important for us in this line of work here because that's how we get found. And the best way to help us do that is for you to like, subscribe, and share the show with your friends, your family, and your followers. Do what I do. Okay? Share the show with people that you know it's going to piss them off. Because then what happens is once you send them the link, then the algorithm thinks that that's what they want to see, and they'll keep on sending it. They'll keep on putting our content in their feed. All right? Yes, you'll piss them off. Yes, I understand that. But it's a great way for us to get found because either they'll like the show and they'll follow it, or we'll just get some more exposure. That's all. I do it to my sister all the time. She blocks me for a couple of days, and she lets me back in. So it's fine. It's a lot of fun. You can do it too. All right? Remember, like, subscribe, and share the show with your friends, your family, and your followers. Help us spread the love and the joy of our show. Okay? All right. Now, tonight's guest is brought to us by Podmatch. What's Podmatch? I'm glad you asked. Podmatch is like Tinder for podcasters. The host puts up a profile, the guest puts up a profile, the algorithm puts them together, and then you get to match or pass. It's just like a dating app, so it's great. It's a lot of fun, and it's very, very helpful, actually. Why? Because most podcast guests and hosts spend hours researching connections, coordinating interviews, and of course, working on administrative tasks while really only spending about maybe 10% of their time on what really matters, and that's recording impactful podcast episodes. What Podmatch does is very simple. It enables the podcast guest and host to reclaim their time through automations and streamlined processes so that they can focus on creating content that really matters. Best way to check it out is head over to our profile page on Podmatch at podmatch.com/member/Joe. Up there on the screen, will be in the show notes. Check it out. Take a look around. Sign up for Podmatch. If you're a guest, if you're looking to be a guest on a show, you never know. You might end up being on our show, like our guest here tonight. So lots of ways for you to do things around getting on shows like this. So check it out. Podmatch.com/member/Joe. That's podmatch.com/member/Joe. All right. Well, he's been patiently waiting backstage. Let's bring him on up here. Folks, Thunder Parley is a California gubernatorial candidate. He's an entrepreneur, self-described professional problem solver, entering one of the most crowded, to say the least, and unpredictable governor's races in the country, running on a platform focused on affordability, government efficiency, homelessness reform, and restoring opportunity in a state that, quite honestly, a lot of people believe is becoming unlivable. Thunder says California doesn't need another polished politician. It needs someone willing to challenge a broken machine. And tonight we're going to find out just how realistic this vision is. Thunder, welcome to the show, sir.
Thanks for having me, Joe. I'm excited to talk about our platform.
It's going to be a lot of very interesting questions, my friend. A lot of very interesting questions to ask you. So before we even get into all of that stuff, I have a very incredibly important question to ask you, and I've been asked this by a couple of people close to me and friends of the show. Is Thunder Parley your real name?
Yes, it is.
Okay. I'm glad we got that established right off the bat.
I've gotten the accusations on social media. Who is this? Is AI just making up names for the ballot now? No, I'm as real as it gets.
Yeah, well, I wouldn't be surprised if AI does that stuff. I use AI for certain things, but I am not going to say I trust it for too much. But it is great to have you here, sir. And you talk about California as a systems failure. Well, actually, before we get into that, let me ask you this: who the hell are you?
All right, so a little background about me, and this will kind of maybe help you understand why I'm in this position now. I grew up in a multi-generational family home, lower middle class on the East Coast. I'm the oldest of 5 children. And I spent my whole life working to save up and do something with my life. I was always a dreamer. I had a vision. I was good at math. I taught myself how to program in high school. I worked sometimes 80 plus hours a week in the summers to save up, to just try and do something with my life, go to school, something. And I went to public high school, and my junior year, when you're getting ready, thinking about college and everything, my guidance counselor, and I didn't have a relationship with my guidance counselors. I went to school and then I played sports and I worked, told me that I was probably too poor and not smart enough to really go out of state and do anything, because I wanted to go to California. I wanted to get out of the freezing cold winters, the shoveling snow, and all those wonderful things that just take up time in your day. I was a dreamer.
Yeah.
And I ignored her. I applied. I got into college.
Good.
Spent all my money, my entire life savings, and I landed in California with $50 left to my name and a chance at education. I didn't even know I had to buy books. Nobody prepared me for that. Here I am, a computer science and math major with no books or anything, but I started tutoring my peers for money. The school paid me. I worked really hard, and ended up getting a scholarship to stay. And it was amazing. I'm like, here I am now. I'm in California being basically paid to be here.
Wow.
I got recruited by Hewlett Packard during undergrad for an internship, and they ended up letting me telecommute through the rest of my time. And after 5.5 years there, I left and joined a small little startup that just went public called Google. And I spent 18.5 years there.
Just a small company.
Yeah. But as an engineer, but I'm a fairly outgoing person, and I got involved with the food program. I helped hire chefs. I got published in a cookbook. I actually spent time in the kitchen serving my recipes to my coworkers. Picked up a couple nicknames, the Fun Master and the Juggernaut, because once I started going on something, it was very hard to stop me. And several years ago, I do our finances and markets and stuff, and we've been through ups and downs in California.
Mm-hmm.
I graduated college right after 9/11 into the dot-com bust. And I luckily was able to get a job and keep a job. And I feel some of those similar vibes today for students that are graduating into a very uncertain economy. Here in California, we're losing tens of thousands of private jobs. Gavin runs around talking about good job numbers, but they're all government paid jobs with our taxpayer dollars, and it's not sustainable. We keep wanting to take more and more from people.
Yeah.
And as I'm paying my taxes over the years, I'm starting to look at how much more and more California's taking. And I look out in the streets and say, where's this money going? What's going on? Why is everything getting so expensive? Why does it look like everything's deteriorating? Something feels broken. And so instead of looking at computer systems being broken, I started looking at our political system.
Mm-hmm.
And that journey started to make me very uncomfortable. The more I saw the bills that were being debated, why are we ignoring this? Where's this money going? Nothing makes sense, right? I mean, you didn't have to dive deep to find that, but I wanted to find more.
Mm-hmm.
So I stepped away from tech in early 2024 after I'd been investigating for a couple of years and traveled the state, talking to people, seeing what the rest of California is like, and just heartbreaking stories. Families that their kids graduate and they're immediately leaving the state. They don't see a vision. They don't see a dream here. We don't feel safe in the streets. We see a mental health and addiction crisis in the streets. We have some great programs to help people that are temporarily struggling and get them off the streets. Mm-hmm. Those work. But we're not treating the worst problems that we have, and they only get worse. And so I talked to people and said, if we're going to solve problems, it's not going to be, going and joining city council, and we need change at the top. And it's not blow up the system. We need actual real governance, somebody who's not interested in just political power or keeping a paycheck or doing the flashy news things. We just want California to work for us. We kind of want what used to be boring politics. Myself and many of my coworkers would usually be heads down. You worry about getting your paycheck, keeping a roof over your head, taking care of your family.
Yeah, like most
but
people.
Now there's something bigger than that. And so I had the conversation about, should I leave California? We hear all the time, tons of people go to Texas, Tennessee, Florida. These families I talk to, their children are going to these states, go to Nevada, and it just doesn't make sense. And so I said, I know I have the leadership and the ideas. Can we actually get to the top and start making change in California? Because if I just packed up and left, I would regret for the rest of my life not trying to do something in a state that is so amazing, so beautiful. It gave me like my California dream. And to me, it felt it would be wrong and selfish, because I know there are people here that are struggling, that feel like they don't have a voice, that they're not being heard. And I want to be the voice of the people. It's not about me. I don't need to do this. I never planned on doing this, but I want to help people.
Isn't that usually the way it happens, though? You don't really plan on getting involved in these things, and yet somehow, some way, you do.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's where we are. I couldn't just sit here and watch it happen, and I couldn't just run away from it and not have that eat me up alive.
And like I said, most of the time, people feel like the way you feel. They don't act on it, and they just pack up their bags and go. But here you are. You're doing something. You're throwing your hat into a ring that has 61 candidates just on the. And you're running on a Democratic ballot, correct?
Yep.
Right, so you have 61 other candidates running here, and I'm telling you, you got a battle ahead of you for sure. But in looking over your website and looking over everything that I've pulled on you in the research, I mean, you do have answers, you do have solutions to a lot of the problems. But realistically speaking, how is that going to how is that going to happen? Well, we're going to get into all that stuff, as we go through here. I don't want to jump too far ahead. I almost did a few minutes ago, but I do commend you for at least stepping up and doing something. A lot of people armchair quarterback the whole thing. Well, if I had an opportunity to do something, I would do this, and this, but they don't do anything about it. And here you are.
I live this. I pay the same insane utility bills, spiraling insurance costs, water, housing, everything. Everything is going out of control, and it doesn't have to be that way.
Right. Do you think California's failing because bad people are in charge, or because the system just produces bad outcomes no matter who's in office?
It's complicated. So it's a series of policy decisions that sometimes things don't work as intended, or they have secondary effects that nobody thought of or didn't consider, right? Mm-hmm. Or they're just aspirational. We'll find a way to pay for this. Everybody's here, right? But when you start to see people leaving now, as we're actively chasing people with money out of the state, right? It's not homeless people leaving the state. It's people that have jobs, are paying taxes, are funding these aspirational programs that we want to take care of people. California does a pretty good job of taking care of people at the low end, but we're absolutely gutting our middle class. And it's unfair, and it's crushing families. We drive retirees out of the state, which that alone is just insane, right? Mm-hmm. Because we as taxpayers, we are paying for people's pensions, whatnot. They retire, and then they just move over the border to Arizona. Mm-hmm. And then we're sitting, and they leave the communities they help build. And to me, that it breaks up families, and you're chasing people out of the state. It doesn't make sense.
No, that's very true. That's very true. So if I was able to drop you into Sacramento tomorrow with full control, what's the first system you would audit?
First system I'd audit. So on a very deeply personal level, I would go to the CPUC, and PG&E is one of the big utilities, and their justifications for rate hikes. And there's a lot I could say about that.
And so for people who don't know what those abbreviations mean, can you
so that's the California Public Utilities Commission.
Okay.
And they're appointed by the governor, and they approve the rate hikes. We have our utilities, most of our utilities, and PG&E is the big one that's been in the news for the fires, and they were charged with, I think it was like 82 homicides from their negligence before COVID. And there's actually a funny story, if I can tell, about that. Yeah. This is a very interesting arc. So before COVID, our current governor, Gavin Newsom, was running around saying, well, I don't care if PG&E goes bankrupt. Let them, right? They were negligent. We paid these rates. They're supposed to reinvest in the grid, the infrastructure, safety, fire prevention, and they failed. And they're a public company, and they were on the verge of bankruptcy. Now, everybody remembers the big news story during COVID that Gavin Newsom, while everybody was locked down, was out at the French Laundry, the 3 Michelin star restaurant, having a huge, fancy, expensive dinner.
Yeah.
That's a news story. What a lot of people don't talk about is who he was there with, which was one of the top lobbyists for PG&E.
Interesting.
So after that dinner, Mr. I don't care, PG&E will go bankrupt, worked on legislation that bailed out PG&E at the taxpayers' expenses. He then took, and so this all happens during COVID while everybody's talking about lockdowns and everything.
Yeah.
He takes his chief energy staffer, Alice Reynolds, and appoints her president of California's Public Utility Commission.
Wow.
Where over the next several years, she goes on to rubber stamp all these rate hikes from the utilities without diving into their justification. And we see our rates go up 63% in 5 years. They've doubled in the last 10. I don't even have a home computer other than my laptop. I don't run a server farm or anything. I ran my air conditioning for a couple days last summer, and I had a $500 bill for electricity.
Wow.
And so I started looking at the rates, and I compared it to Texas. I am actually paying 4 times the rates. You just go online, and there's always these averages. Sacramento has their own utility. So all our politicians sitting in Sacramento have Sacramento's municipal utility district, where they pay less than half the rates we pay. But those get averaged together. So when you see California's average, you're like, oh, California's a little bit higher than the rest of the nation. No, most of California is 4 times higher than the rest of the nation. I was a math major too. I love numbers. So there's a little story about how, and so now we are still paying for PG&E's mistakes in our bills. In fact, one of the op-eds on my website is about when you turn on a light switch, you're not just paying for electricity and transmission. There's 22 different taxes, social fees, and other legislature pet projects, programs. I'm paying for it so that my neighbor could put in a heat pump or something and get some rebate, right? If we took all those and put them in the state budget where they belong, we'd drop our electric rates 25% overnight. That's actually a plan I have versus some other candidates about, I'm just going to lower bills. And it's a great talking point. Sounds exciting, but there's no plan. That's a plan.
I agree with you. I agree. Yeah. One of the things that I've seen in doing my research on especially about California, I have friends that live in California, and I hear from them all the time about this stuff. The cost of living is just outrageous. And so, to actually have a plan is one thing. Just talking points is completely different. And it's interesting, too, you're talking about how all of these backdoor deals are being made, especially happening during COVID when nobody's really paying attention to that stuff. It's the perfect opportunity to do those things.
Oh, yeah. And as a matter of fact, my mayor, who is also in the race, made another backdoor deal with PG&E recently. San Jose had been threatening to municipalize their electricity like Sacramento has to lower bills. And he went with the city manager and made a deal that, well, we won't do this if you promise to prioritize some transmission lines for some data centers. So my tech bros. And he basically threw the city under the bus because that's a great bargaining point for the city to keep to try and bring rates down for its citizens. And he threw it under the bus, his tech bros, got all their donations, and decided to run for governor far after I had declared. So,
wow,
just another true story. And you
It's
start
amazing.
to realize that politics is a dirty game, and you see what people will do for money. I'm not doing this for money. As a matter of fact, I've toyed with the idea of donating half the first year salary to charity to just show that this isn't about the paycheck. I'm a computer science and math guy. If I want a paycheck, I'd go pick up an AI job.
And probably make considerably more than you would in elected office. Well, that's if you do things on the up and up.
Yeah.
So I mean, I'm just saying. So you describe yourself as a problem solver, but again, government's not engineering, right?
No.
And code doesn't argue back. People do.
That's correct. Yeah. So it's with people. But what we've lacked in Sacramento is transparency. Because when people have the facts, they're harder to argue against, right?
Sure.
One of the things that when I started my campaign, and I always say is, I'm sick of the gaslighting. I'm sick of being lied to. I'm sick of the the propaganda, the half-truths. We've had just a number of scandals. NDAs being signed over Newsom's when he raised the minimum wage. We called it Panera Gate because he made a carve out. They had a carve out in the law that his Panera buddy who donated to him, Panera employees were considered a bakery, so they weren't exempt from the $20 fast food minimum wage. Right? Things like that. Then we have our legislatures is building a new building for themselves. They call it the Capitol Annex Project. It was supposed to be about, I think it was supposed to be about $400 million, this big new building up in Sacramento. Well, they signed a bunch of NDAs. Now we don't know how much it's costing. Estimates are up to maybe getting close to $1 trillion or something. It's just, we don't know. What we do know is that they built it so that they have private ways to avoid the public, because the current, they call it the swing space up in Sacramento, is anybody from the public can go through security, go find their legislature's floor and walk to their office and see if they're there or talk to their staff, or, you know, you're servant of the public. So big, expensive project to avoid the public isn't a good look, but it feels like nobody cares.
All right.
And speaking of cost overruns, high-speed rail, right? Another big topic. It was supposed to be done, and now the latest estimate came out that it'll be $231 billion to complete. We could buy everybody in the state airplane tickets for the next 20 years at that. Right?
Just think what you could do with housing for that.
And it's one of the ones I looked into too. And I said, what is going on here? And I tell people, it's like, do you know they actually have 4 offices across the state? Sacramento, San Jose, Los Angeles, places where they're not even working, just staffed offices, just racking up costs. And so I think via transparency and accountability, you have a more open government, more open conversations, and be honest. And I want to go in as a problem solver and say, look, I didn't create any of these problems. I'm not tied to any legacy interests. I don't really want to point a bunch of fingers.
Right.
Let's just say, give me the data. What can we do to make this better? What are the metrics we want to hit? What is the outcome we want, right? Just building 1 million houses, I guess that's a goal for people, but what kind of houses? Where are these houses? Mm-hmm. Are your bills going to be affordable? Because I know people that we could give them a free house, but they're not going to be able to pay the property taxes, the utilities, the insurance. And, you know, so I want to do real goals, and I want the long-term sustainability of California to be there. That doesn't mean one-time taxes. We just raised the sales tax again in my county, and we're still at a $700 million deficit. So you want to just take more money from everybody, and you haven't fixed any of the structural problems. So we need somebody to just sort of say, reset. Right. Let's talk about what we can do, and let's plan for the future, not just quarter by quarter, because I feel like we're getting to a very bad inflection point. We see people keep leaving, and I want to actually bring people here, build some housing, but also unlock existing housing. So this is another topic we could discuss, is that there's plenty of available housing, but because of California's laws, people won't rent it out. There were a lot of minority mom and pop landlords during COVID that these 2, 3, some counties went 3.5 years of rent moratoriums where you could just say, I'm not paying rent. I don't have it. Even though people had a job, 6-figure jobs, they could just say, I don't have the rent. And legally, you couldn't evict them. Mm-hmm. And it bankrupted them. And then people sell the properties. They end up with corporate landlords. That doesn't help homeowners. That doesn't help. Like, one of the things I care about is pathways to ownership. I want people to be able to own their own little piece of California.
It's a further step in destroying the middle class.
Yeah, exactly. And if you can't have a stable home, stable community, you don't raise a family, you don't stay here.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Now, a lot of people, of course, we look at California and we see a lot of government failure. right?
Mhm.
That's where we look at. But how much of that is also driven by market forces, geography, interest rates, insurance risk, national economics?
Um, I mean, we have cycles, right? But um, the economy got super juiced during COVID. We had zero interest rates. It drove housing up.
Mm-hmm.
People to other states. There's secular housing bubbles right now. We see deflation. It doesn't help, but like California is always, it's a huge economy, depending on the price of gas, fourth or fifth largest economy in the world. And we have amazing beauty. We have a very strong educational system, at least secondary education.
Mm-hmm.
And I do have a lot to say on education. And companies, and it's, we have Silicon Valley. We're at this inflection point with AI, and I really want California to be at the center of that. I don't want that to go to another country. I want us to keep innovating here, and that innovation drives our economy and drives us to actually can drive down costs. That's part of innovation, right? We have innovations around electricity. One of my ideas is that we can build small scale nuclear co-located with desalinization. We can get cheap power and cheaper water, as opposed to we always have, there's a drought and water's funny, because my water company over the years I've lived here set bills about, you need to conserve water. You need to conserve water. Well, here's a fact, because I posted this on X earlier this year. I showed my bills. I cut my usage in my household by 30% as an experiment.
Mm-hmm.
My bill was higher several months later than it was at the start of the year.
And how did that happen?
Rate hikes, built-in static fees. It's not, you think, my water bill's based on my water usage. It's not. Water company back asked for another rate hike, said people aren't using enough water, so we need to hike the rates.
Even though they just told everybody not to use so much water.
California's gas is very expensive because people aren't driving enough. Right? No, it's silly.
That's like the reverse of supply and demand.
Exactly. And I got things to say about the supply and demand people too. You want to talk about property taxes for a second?
Yeah. Before we do that, though,
Sure.
because property taxes are one of my things that just irritates the life out of me. Because Texas is pretty bad on property taxes, also.
Yeah.
But get into just go back to the economy in California for a second. So if you cut regulations tomorrow, all right, what actually changes in 6 months? Do prices drop, or do other forces keep them high?
I think other forces keep them high, right? So when we say regulations, it can mean a lot of things, right? Are we talking building, permitting, right? That tends to be the big one. But for things to pencil out, we need other things like let's talk about my math policy for a second.
That was my next question.
Perfect. So this is math stands for making advancement tax-free for households. There's two important things it does. One is benefit cliffs, which people aren't familiar. They're also called poverty traps. One of the examples I give is that there might be a single mother who was working a good job, and she gets free childcare. She's done a fantastic job. She gets $1,000 a year raise, which, it's not that much. She could lose her entire healthcare or her entire childcare benefit, that's in California, that's $22,000 a year.
Wow.
So can you imagine making less money for getting a promotion? Yet this is a system we have in place. In my calling people around California, I've had people concerned. They're like, I'm older. I work a part-time job just to keep paying the bills. I get food assistance, but we have limits where, if they get an extra quarter an hour, pick up an extra shift, they can end up losing their entire food assistance. So, you try and make an extra $100 and you lose hundreds of dollars of groceries. Doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
When people try and advance and work hard or make more money or get rewarded for doing the right thing, California has several systems in place that punishes them. And
Well, that's the problem.
one of the worst is in our tax code. We use the term progressive, which it sounds great, sounds very lefty, sounds fair, but on top of federal taxes, it gets to be insane. If you have two people working trying to raise a family, you see how much money goes away. It's not really fair. So my math plan is the most equitable tax plan, and that says, let's give families and students and our retirees some relief and say tax-free the first $98,000 in a household. After that, 4.9%. We need the income tax. We need some revenue, but as you advance, you get a promotion after that. You change jobs, you get a raise. You know how much you're going to keep. You don't get pushed into these punitive tax brackets over 10, 12, 13, 14%.
Wow.
That's nuts. That's like, and then on top of sales tax, right? So the state's taking over 10% off, and then you're taking a 10% sales tax to buy anything. Why? And when we do that, the jobs will come back to California. People will stay in California. People will say, that's fair. I can help fund California. Businesses will stay here. Instead of saying, oh, we're going to come out, we're going to tax the hell out of businesses, they leave. We've seen that. We've had hundreds of businesses taking thousands of jobs have packed up and left California. Why not be business friendly? That's job friendly. That's being people friendly. That's saying the people that want to work here, that want to raise a family, that care about California, we want you here.
Yeah.
That's my message, because that's what I've heard from people is they want to feel like their government actually wants them here, that respects the money they're putting in.
So if they did go through with the plan like you laid out, your math plan, how would California continue to fund things like the schools, roads, prisons, and all the safety net programs that the state has?
So by implementing the math plan, everybody immediately thinks, oh my God, so much less money is going to come in. Well, no, it's actually not. The very small percentage of people that pay the highest amount, some of them have already left, right? And what it would do is it would get us closer to the budget we had just a few years ago, but higher and adjusted for inflation. California's budget has exploded far over 60% in the last few years. For what? People's lives aren't 63% better. The streets aren't 63% more paved or less potholes, right? There's not 63% less homeless. My bills haven't gone down 63%. So the state's spending 63% more. Where's it going? This goes back to transparency and accountability. Because Newsom's thrown up his hands and said, we've spent $24 billion on homeless. It's gone up 40%, and we don't know what happened. There's just nobody just throwing out the money, and nobody knows what it's doing and what the results are. So we need to start looking at these.
Yeah, well, realistically, it's lining pockets, and it's going to administrative costs, and very, very little is getting actually funneled down into the actual program itself to do anything.
Yeah. I one of the ones I wrote about on my website has to do with our schools. Over COVID, several states passed similar legislature. Ours specifically added $4 billion to our public schools. But the condition was it couldn't go to the classroom and to teachers. It had to go to climate coordinators and social welfare counselors and other administrative things that sounds nice, but if kids are graduating high school and they can identify their emotions and they can name 20 genders, but they can't do math. Some of them can't read, and they can't get jobs in California to afford to stay here. So we end up spending thousands of dollars to put kids through school to sort of train the workforce for other states because they don't stay here.
Right.
It doesn't make any sense.
Now you have a proposal called LIMIT. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah. So LIMIT stands for Lost Instructional Minutes in Teaching. And so a couple of years ago, in my traveling of the state, I encountered a mother who heard me talking about classroom evacuations. Now,
Okay.
when I say that to some people, they think, oh, like, school shooter. No, this isn't what it is. These evacuations, also known as room clears, are when a student is very disruptive, like swearing, throwing things, threatening the teacher, things that didn't really happen a lot, as I recall when we were in school, but
Yeah.
here we are. The process is that instead of removing that student and going to detention or something, they wait for administration to come down. Then everybody else in the class evacuates the room.
So the opposite happens.
Into the hallways, plays on their phone, bathrooms, vape, which you're not supposed to be doing, but it happens all the time. Until they reset the student. So 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 30 minutes, right? And so what are these students doing? They're not learning. They're not like, oh, well, we'll go out playground and, practice our, times tables or something. And these happen very frequently. They're not tracked. And, I want accountability from our schools. Their schools have a primary mission, which is to educate our children, not to graduate them and not be able to read. And so I think so going back to the mother, she told me that, about there's disciplinary issues. Her daughter was in kindergarten and started acting funny, and she couldn't get any information from the school. Like, what's going on? Why, she's not talking to me, but after a while, she finally found out her daughter had been being bullied by a young boy in her class. When we think of bullying, we think, maybe hair pulling, name calling. This young boy was describing to her his ways he was planning to kill her.
Oh my gosh.
So when the mother found that out, she ballistic on the school, pulled her daughter out, was able to get her to a different school. And told me that the school said, well, we couldn't tell you because it's a matter with that young boy. And, at that age, California has laws to, quote, protect him. I'm like, why are we protecting bullies? That doesn't make sense. I don't care what age. What about the girl that's traumatic at a young age? Why are we allowing somebody to traumatize another person? And we're trying to protect the aggressor. And then I guess a few years later, this boy ended up breaking his teacher's arm, I believe is in third grade. It's like some problems. We have problems, and we should be transparent about those. And so limit is about saying when problems are happening in the class, we need to track that and figure out what do we need to do. Is there a certain student that needs some different accommodations? I care about teachers. I care about teachers being safe. I care about them doing the jobs. The teachers I know who are passionate, that want to teach kids.
Right.
But we see teachers are being burnt out and leaving the profession in mass numbers. So it's not just pay. Everybody's like, oh, well, just throw more money at it. We are up to $27,000 a year per student for some of the worst educational outcomes in the whole country. As a matter of fact, recently, UCSD, San Diego, had to retool their remedial math program. So this is, incoming freshmen that aren't up to snuff for math. To go back, and that introductory math class had to take concepts all the way back to first grade.
Wow.
We're graduating high schoolers who cannot do first grade math concepts. I mean, it looks great if your stat is how many diplomas did we hand out? We have a 90% graduation rate, but those diplomas don't mean crap. And then for me, from my affordability perspective and accountability, to say you're going to send a student to a state school that has to teach them elementary school math, who's paying for that? I'm paying for that. That student might be taking out a loan for that. Their hardworking parents are already trying to keep a roof over their head. They're helping pay for that. How dare you? Are you serious? And nobody wants to call this out. I'm calling it out. It's absolutely insane.
I'm still trying to wrap my head around a third grader breaking a teacher's arm in a classroom and
Yeah.
nothing happens to the child.
Yeah. So that
No
story actually
disciplinary
inspired me
action,
to
nothing.
start looking so much more at the educational system because it's not the schools that we went to when we were younger. And now we have problems. Parents are protesting here in San Jose because 5 schools are closing down. Well, because we don't have the money. We don't have the students, the enrollment. We have so many less kids going to school. We can't just throw more money for less kids. That's insane, right?
It just doesn't make any sense. How do
you're working, man. If you cut your hours to 20 hours a week, would you expect a 30% bump in your paycheck?
Of course not.
You would love to get it though.
Yeah, fantastic. Yeah, come on. You want to pay me for doing nothing? That's fantastic. I appreciate that.
Another system that's like that is our public transit out here. So our big one in the Bay Area is called BART, Bay Area Rapid Transit. And they have a lot of problems. I actually have a station I could see from my house. They opened it during COVID. And they decided they were going to pay their workers hazard pay, double time to run basically empty trains during COVID. And now they're extending through San Jose with this huge tunnel project. It's been in the news out here. It's over $2.2 billion per mile to extend this rail line. They fought for years fare enforcement because you'll see videos all the time online of people smoking meth, fentanyl on the trains, just lots of bad behavior. I like public transit, but it needs to be reliable and it needs to be safe for people.
Yeah.
And the board didn't want to do fare enforcement forever. And a lot of people don't know that over 90% of serious crimes, think like, assaults, robberies that happen on our transit systems start with somebody evading the fare. Somebody didn't want to play by the rules. And so you force it there, you can stop somebody from getting robbed or attacked. So now that they've been putting in better gates and enforcing that, they're like, oh, wow, we're actually making a little bit more money. And, but the ridership's not back. And they blame it on the economy and COVID and work from home. And that's part of it. But part of it is I've ridden it once and it was to film a video since it's opened years ago. And I can walk to it in 2 minutes because between the costs they charge and I could just get my car and go. It doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
So we need to fund things that make sense. If you want more people on transit, make it a transit that people want to be on. And we look at their operating budget, they want more sales tax to bail themselves out because they're going to be bankrupt by next year because their budget went up like 70% and their ridership's down like 60%. I'm like, what are you doing? Where's this money going? Why is nobody calling this accountable?
Not only where's the money going, but where's the money coming from? Sooner or later, there's just not going to be enough money out in the public sector to pay for this stuff.
That's where we are. In 2022, we had $100 billion surplus. The economy was juiced. California got a whole bunch of extra tax revenue from mostly the people taking, selling stocks, right? Market rebounded from COVID. Lots of jobs, zero interest rates. We had $100 billion surplus, and now we're projected to be at like a $68 billion deficit was the projection in 2024. It might be a little not as bad as we thought because people are selling things and leaving and the stock market's doing good again, but we're at a structural deficit.
Yeah.
It's not sustainable. It's not sustainable. To flip over $100 billion from surplus to deficit in 2 years. And that's why I said we can cut the taxes with math, bring the jobs back. Instead of saying I want to take more from each person, or let's go rob a few people who've made it really good in life, why don't we bring back the jobs and everybody pays a smaller, fairer share? Why? Who's against that?
Well, the thing is, too, is the more money that people have in their pockets, the more they're willing to spend, and that's what juices up your economy. Yeah. When you start taxing...
And our retirees, right? We lowered the rate, retirees, we're still paying into pensions, Why don't we have these people stay in the neighborhoods and communities they worked in their whole lives and helped build, instead of them just jumping borders, Arizona, Texas? Like, keep them here. That's like,
exactly.
It should be a reward for your lifetime of service to California.
And it all boils down to taxes. Taxes, taxes, taxes. You know, this country was founded on a revolt over a 2% tax. Could you imagine where our founding generation would be doing right about now? But the issue too is, you mentioned it earlier, property taxes. So let's dip into the property taxes. What's the current rate of property tax in the state of California right now?
Okay, I love this subject because I am going to smash some conceptions and some propaganda around this, because one of the most effective propagandas on people is to say something very simple that it's hard to argue with. And then they believe your movement, and they would feel stupid if they argue against it. Mm-hmm. But anyways, so property tax in California, going back to 1978, there was a revolt of taxpayers, of voters, of the people who are paying the money. Those aren't the enemy, but we treat them like the enemy. Not me, but some people do. So it's 1%. But California's property is expensive. And, you know, rightfully so. It's property's limited. There's a lot of beauty. The weather's amazing. And but it's 1%, but then extra bonds, everything. And so the average property tax rate, I think, is somewhere around 1.7 in California. Everybody says, oh, it's a small number, right? But on $1 million home, $17,000 a year. I personally pay $12,000 a year as my property tax bill. It's just over that. You tell most people across the country that, they go, what? That's insane. But then you have these groups out here going, we need more property taxes. You guys aren't funding the schools, which we've just talked about. Oh, we are funding the schools.
Right. Yeah.
What's going on? But here's the thing, right? So some of the other candidates that are running are considered leading in polls, which the polls are funny because they're only like 800 people. So if you've never heard of me, I'm not in the polls. But once people hear about me, they go, you know what? That's actually, there's very few people I've talked to who have gone through my platform and say, I won't vote for you. I like what you stand for. So they want to raise property taxes. They say, oh, these corporations aren't paying enough. These mom and pop stores, we need to raise their costs so that they can raise their prices. With all of this works against affordability. And, you know, I know Texas has higher property taxes, but, you know, I don't know many people in Texas outside of having mega mansions that are probably paying $12,000 a year.
No.
I live in a very small urban style home that was built in an infill development, right? It's a very modest, most people would call it a starter home.
Okay.
That's me. And 12,000 is still insane. And it goes up every year. So people say, oh, Prop 13, it's so unfair. It protects people. You know, it's unfair to people that, no, it keeps people in their homes. It keeps retirees in their homes. It keeps revenue predictable. It allows it to go up 2% per year, which is normally tracks inflation during normal times. Now, when we talk about affordability, everybody says, well, we need more affordable housing, right? Let me tell you how affordable housing works in California in one way. And you tell me if this is fair. So I'm paying $12,000 a year. There's an affordable apartment complex very close by, income restricted, you know, lower income families. I think that's all great stuff, right? Mm-hmm. When we build these, though, developers don't get paid on how efficiently they build. They get paid based on a percentage of the development costs when the state's funding this and everything. And I write about this in one of my affordability op-eds on my website. We hand out these tax credits to get them started, but you can't pay laborers. You can't, you know, buy building materials with a tax credit. So they go to the banks, and the banks take these tax credits to lower their bills, and they give about 85, 90 cents on the dollar back. So immediately we're funding banks for God knows what reason. Developers build the housing, not trying to keep costs down necessarily. make it pencil out. And then some nonprofit takes over, they sell it to some nonprofit that then manages it, right? Everybody's paid well in the nonprofit. A nonprofit's not a charity per se.
Right.
It has a very misleading title. It means that they technically don't mean a profit, meaning any money they make, they basically pay themselves. When a nonprofit takes over this complex and calls it affordable housing, they get relief from the state. They don't pay property taxes. So you have these apartment complexes being run by very well-paid nonprofits and executives, providing some housing to people who need it, but not paying any property taxes. Instead, they pocket the money. So a recent example I used was one near me. I looked it up and I said, I'm paying $12,000 a year for my little slice of land. Here's this apartment complex that's valued at tens of millions of dollars, and they pay zero property taxes and $37,000 a year for sewage fees. That's it. So you're telling me you want to go after grandma, you want to go after the family, you want to go after the young students and entrepreneurs trying to get into housing, and you need to raise their property taxes, and who's not paying their fair share? And I'm still at $12,000 a year. And some people, I know people are paying $20,000 a year property taxes for their single property, the only property they own. That's nuts. So these groups, like, I'll call them out, the YIMBYs, they say it's supply and demand. It's supply and demand, right? Oh, Prop 13 is, we could develop this into this apartment. I go, so you want to price these people out of some of their single family homes, build a big apartment complex that maybe then goes to an NGO and as affordable housing, and then pay zero property taxes. Mm-hmm. So where's the logic there, right? Let's have this conversation, because I'm not afraid of you. I'm not afraid to say, no, what's your agenda? You're trying to get the developers paid.
Yeah.
We need developers. I'm not anti-development, but I want everybody playing fair, and I want to have these open and honest conversations. Why are the banks getting a VIG off our affordable housing?
It's a great question.
As one, why can't we incentivize cheaper development instead of saying, well, the developer gets a percent? If you tell the developer you get a percent of what you sell this for, they're not going to build as cheap as possible.
Right.
I mean, I want it to be cheap. I want it to be safe. I want it to be the right type of housing. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, that's my thing of property taxes and affordability. And hopefully that's a little eye-opening for some people.
Well, it's really it's fascinating. You've given me some insight into some things and how California does it that I wasn't really aware of. But my personal opinion on property taxes is they're immoral and they shouldn't exist in the first place. You spend 30 years paying for a piece of property, and then the government can come in and just snatch it away from you because you miss a payment on a property tax. I think that's ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean, and it's not just property tax. My individual bill has about 22 other special assessments, mostly for school district bonds.
Yeah, same here. I got a great one for you. A couple of years ago, when I first purchased the asylum, when they did the mortgage, right? So I have my taxes and everything come out of the mortgage payment every month, so on and so forth. And I was really happy. I was like, wow, and I put down a lot. I put down the most I was allowed legally to put down on the property, okay, to do the mortgage, and had a really it was perfect. The monthly payment was perfect. Everything was great. Budgeted perfectly for me. And about a year and a half later, I get a notice saying that, well, we had to reassess your escrow balance because there's a shortage. The shortage is over $3,000. So therefore, your mortgage payment's going to go up about $400 something a month. I'm like, for what? School district. The school district taxes. Why? Because when they did the original assessment on the escrow, they didn't include the school district taxes because the school district failed to send them the correct numbers, so they went ahead with it without it. And now I'm paying the penalty for that by having to pay an additional escrow on my property and into my mortgage to pay for school district taxes to a school district that I don't even have children going to. I think it's ridiculous. And then I look at the tax statement. So I got school district tax, I got the hospital district tax, I got this tax, that tax. There's like 8 or 9 different taxes in this property tax that I pay, and it's absolutely ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. I think property taxes are immoral, and I know that here in Texas, the state representatives were trying to, or at least was on the agenda to zero out the property taxes in the state of Texas, but of course, through legislative shenanigans, it never got brought to the floor to do that. But yet, that's all they talked about. Get rid of those property taxes. I think the state house here in Texas is probably one of the worst in the country.
Yeah. So to be clear, I'm not fighting to say no property taxes. I mean, ideally, I would love that. There's,
sure,
it's kind of a fantasy fiscally at the current moment. But what I want to fight against is this idea that everybody needs to pay more property taxes is nuts.
Well, what do you think about this? Let me ask you this. What do you think about someone, first of all, who is completely paid off their home, eliminating property taxes for them, and eliminating property taxes for senior citizens and retirees?
Maybe extreme, but I believe retirees and senior citizens, depending on it, there should be some relief. And we've done some things in California where we let you, if you want to like downsize or like, you're retired, you want to move to a more affordable part of California, keep maybe, if you bought your house years ago, your sort of lower tax assessment with Prop 13 and let you transfer it. We do have some good things like that. Mm-hmm. I don't want people saying like overseas investors buying houses in California and buying them all cash. We
agreed.
We hear lots of, and then saying you don't get to pay property taxes. No, because that's not fair, right? My goal is to look out for Californians.
So really, who owns the property though?
Yeah, right. Yeah, and I mean when you own it, yeah, I would love to have no property taxes, but I think there's some bigger fish to fry first, and make sure that we don't try to displace people and businesses by jacking up the property taxes, which is actually the platform of several candidates I'm running against. Is I want to make it more expensive for businesses so they leave and take jobs out of the state. And I'm like, you're just nuts.
Well, also look at it like this too. If corporations don't pay taxes, businesses don't pay taxes. How do we know that? Because they jack the price up on their goods and their services they provide, so the consumer actually pays the taxes. That's the offset. So by raising taxes on corporations, business, properties for businesses, all you're doing is adding another tax increase onto the consumer.
Yeah, and I'm a big proponent of small businesses. I have a story that was in the news not too long ago out here where a local business owner who was actually a close friend of mine, the bar, a sandwich shop, pizza place right here in Japantown in San Jose. And he bought another property during COVID and started renovating it. It was an old, ugly building. It had a Mexican restaurant in the bottom and a banquet hall over the top, but it's old structure. And he bought it. He was going to turn it into a breakfast joint because there's not a breakfast joint in that neighborhood. And he started construction, and then the city came back and said, oh, by the way, this is actually a historical property, so you can't do any of this. And they tied him up in red tape and legal limbo for months and months and months. He leveraged his personal house, which is also in the neighborhood, and is now on the verge of bankruptcy and had to close several businesses and lay off a whole bunch of people.
Wow.
Because the city government, and we said, why is this building historical? They're like, oh, somebody put it on the register back in 1980. It's not like some significant building. It was like owned by somebody who was Japanese who had been interned at some point. But it's just a big, ugly building. It's not like some, classic Victorian house or, something like that.
What you would consider to be a historic, construction model architecture.
It's literally bankrupting somebody via property taxes, mortgage, loan payments over just BS.
Right.
And it's things like this that just infuriate me because it's not a government working for the people.
I got you. Now, look, you're running as a Democrat, right? but a lot of the things you say sound very anti-establishment, very anti-Sacramento.
I'm
Are you trying
anti-Trump.
to? Are you? My question is though: are you trying to reform the Democratic Party or run against it from the inside?
I'm trying to bring solutions to people, right? At the end of the day, parties are a checkbox. Parties have platforms. I agree with some things on our platform. I disagree with some things on our platform. We had here's a big disagreement. So before I decided I was going to run as governor, and part of me, this was a couple years back as my concerned citizen and angry voter, Gavin Newsom had made a public statement saying California is stricter on shoplifting than Texas. And I knew that wasn't true. Yeah. And I couldn't sit there and listen to that. Like I said, I'm sick of the gaslighting. So I wrote an op-ed that was published online, breaking down why that was just absolute BS. And it was during this time that it was mostly driven by the California DAs. It was called Prop 36. So in California, you get enough signatures, you can put something on the statewide ballot, vote for, right? This is basically a way to, in the ideal way, is to let our government know they're not doing the right things for us.
Yeah.
And so everybody's probably seen the videos, this wild smash and grabs, and what we had been sold 10 years earlier, and it was called Prop 47. And our attorney general gets to name our ballot initiatives. Named it like the safe cities and neighborhoods ballot, right? And it had some good things in it, like, you're not going to go do life in jail if you're caught with a joint or something like that.
Right.
Like
Common sense. Yeah.
But one of the things it did do was it reclassified shoplifting of under $900 in one incident as its own separate crime that was not a misdemeanor even. It was just
more like a violation.
A violation, like a ticket. It would cost you. And so what that opened the door for was especially organized crime. Now, we were sold this as people are starving in the streets. We shouldn't put somebody in jail for stealing a loaf of bread, right? Things that actually happened in Europe years ago. Mm-hmm. And it sounds good, and California was sold that. But what it opened up was this door to rampant shoplifting, where you could go walk down the street and rob every store. And as long as it was under $900, legally, we pretty much couldn't do anything. And that, along with the proliferation of the addiction and mental health crisis in the streets, right? We see San Francisco, LA. Mm-hmm. Note on San Francisco a couple of years ago, we're averaging over 2 OD deaths a day. And a majority of these deaths were happening at just a couple locations where we had housing first, which is, hey, we noticed that you have a very bad mental health issues and addiction of very dangerous drugs. So we're going to put you in this apartment by yourself. Gee, we wonder what's going to happen. Right? Brilliant. That's very, very compassionate, right? This is, we are doing the right thing with our money. We are saving these people from the beautiful weather outside. Like, right, come on.
But Thunder, where does compassion end and enabling begin in this? Yeah, that's the question. That's an important question.
It is, and it's not compassionate to let these people die like this. So, what ended up on the ballot in November of 2024 is called Prop 36, which was harsher penalties for like fentanyl dealing, reclassifying shoplifting as a more serious crime, because this shoplifting was putting small businesses out of business, businesses leaving. You look at in San Francisco, Union Square, right? Westfield Mall. I used to go take day trips off there, take a day off of work, take the train up to San Francisco, hang out there. The mall's empty now. It's done. It even had a BART station right into it, public transit into a mall, and it's out of business because it's the drugs and it's the mental health
and the smash and grabs and all that stuff.
Grabs, yeah. You literally put businesses out of business. So voters were fed up. And it was the single biggest landslide issue on the ballot. 70% of Californians said, yes, we are sick of this. In the run-up to this, our legislature was trying to negotiate it off the ballot and was putting legislation out with poison pills in it, saying if Prop 36 passes, we're not going to make this a crime or this, like reduce accountability. I'm like, what the hell is wrong with you guys? Gavin Newsom came out against it. The whole Democratic Party did. And I said, you're wrong. I'm standing with the 70% of people who are fed up, right? They didn't know it was going to end up 70%, but they came out and said, no. And everybody, the scare of, it's going to be mass incarceration. No, it's going to be mass accountability again.
Right.
And I'm okay with that, right? The average person doesn't want this to happen. This doesn't help anybody. This doesn't help the middle class. It doesn't help tourism. Tourism's down in LA. Tourism's down in San Francisco. These are revenue sources. So you want to jack up my property taxes? You want to jack up grandmas? You want to raise the sales tax? Why don't we make it so people come visit California again? Because when I came to California, when I would go visit back east, people would be like, dude, that's amazing. Like they thought it was the coolest thing. People were jealous. Now my own brother doesn't even want to come out and visit me in California because last time he did, he took the BART and what he saw on the train terrified him.
Yeah. That
he doesn't even want to come back to the state of California. He used to come out and visit me several times a year when he got time off from work. Not anymore.
Yeah.
That's how bad it's gotten. So that ballot passed and Newsom still refused to fund it in the budget. He finally, after public pressure, put a little bit of money, but we said, no, this is a priority for the state. They're sick of it. And you're not listening to the people. And again, this is what being involved in saying, yeah, I want yes on Prop 36. I want to stop the shoplifting because I talked to right down the street from me, a small convenience store. The owners are legal immigrants that told me how they refused to take any loans during COVID. But told me, why is it so unfair? Why do these people get to come in here, steal things, and the police tell us they can do nothing? It's like, because the laws are stupid. And that's why we have to vote yes on Prop 36.
Yeah.
So in some places, we're actually holding people accountable for rampant shoplifting because in a lot of cases, it's shoplifting to get goods, to then fence, to get money, to get drugs, to feed the addiction crisis, right? How these things are interconnected. This is when I talk about complex systems. It's not just we want to be mean to shoplifters. We want to ruin a kid's life for stealing a candy bar. No, but we have to look at these other effects of we're enabling people to not only destroy their lives, because somebody who's a danger to themselves in the streets, and this is a uncomfortable conversation I had with a city council member. I said, look, we've done a good job of getting people into temporary shelters, people that need help, maybe went through a messy domestic breakup or, catastrophic job loss, family illness, down on their luck. But for the people who refuse treatment, who refuse shelter, that have this combination of like mental health issues and addiction issues and how they're intertwined, I said, they're a danger to themselves. And if somebody's a danger to themselves, they're inherently a danger to another person. So if you want me to walk around and I see an unhoused person and just assume they're just down on their luck and they're not a potential danger, you're lying to yourself. You're lying to other people because we know that that's more and more there's a higher percentage chance mathematically that when you encounter somebody, they are that potential danger.
Well said, my friend. Well said. Well, we're going to start to wrap this up here, brother. Let me ask you this. What's the personal cost of doing this if it doesn't work?
Well, my finances are public. I've already put in 6 figures myself. It's not a small sum. I'm not super wealthy, but it's important to get the message out. It's important to do this. I haven't given up. The polling, it's a matter of getting my name and message out, and voters will ultimately make the decision. And I'm just hoping, enough can hear our message and say, that's what we need. We need somebody who's here to represent us, who actually cares about what we're saying and isn't running for power. We've seen the governor's race in a hypothetical situation. had Kamala become president, she would have taken Gavin Newsom as like Secretary of State or something. Our Lieutenant Governor, Eleni, would have been the governor, and the party would have had an incumbent to support. But we don't. But then nobody stepped up. Eleni ran for governor for a short time and then said nope, and now she's run for like treasurer. It's about people who are just trying to keep a paycheck, just stay in power, and worry about re-elections. And I would love to just be a one-term governor, get some things going in the right direction, and go back to my private life, which I really did enjoy before doing this. This wasn't a decision I made lightly. This was years in the making, and it's a very serious campaign and a very serious platform because I love California, and I know lots of people love California.
What do you want people to say about the campaign if you don't win?
I want them to say we messed up. We had our shot, and that's
fair. That's a fair assessment. Yeah.
That's it, right? Because I've got stacks of mail from people saying, "Oh, it's so important that there's not 2 Republicans on the primary," and I'm like, "Well, I doubt that's going to happen," but also I won't vote for anybody else. I'm in this race because nobody else had the platform, the leadership, the policies that I wanted to support.
Yeah.
And so I could sit there and say, oh, well, it's like going into a restaurant wanting steak. And they go, well, we have, we got marinated tofu. And you go, oh, okay, well, that's great. Like,
good enough.
No,
it's not good.
No. And so, no, I'm not going to vote. I'm going to go somewhere else.
I hear you, brother. I do hear you. All right, Thunder Parley, where can folks go to find out more about you and about your work, sir?
So please do check out my website, votethunder.com. If you like what I have to say, even if you don't live in California, as long as you're a U.S. resident or legal permanent resident, you could chip in a little bit. Helps me get the message out. I built the website myself. Not a penny went to consultants. I pay a very slim team that assists me, but I don't waste any money.
All right.
So I appreciate it. It was great chatting with you today. And I really hope this message gets to people who want to see change in our government and the way it used to be, which is normal people stood up and tried to make a difference and help other people.
And then left when they were finished. Didn't stick around and make a career out of it. All right. Well, Thunder, thank you, man. This was great. I really appreciate you taking the time out of your schedule. I know with the campaign and everything going on, you have a lot to do. So I really appreciate it. And I wish you the best, man. I hope everything works out for you, and I hope you finish top tier, if not win. All right. You got a great message. I like the website. I think you have a good platform you're running on. I'm not a Democrat, but if I was living in California, I would probably vote for you. It's you make common sense, and that's the main thing.
When you do it for the people.
Exactly, that's the whole thing. What it is. You have to follow what the public wants. That's the whole point of being in public service. So you're not forcing your particular views and opinions down the public's throat when they don't want it. So thank you, sir. I appreciate it. And if you want to stick around backstage for a minute while I wrap up the rest of the show, then we can tie up everything back there. Or if not, then we can always touch base later on.
I'll stick around for a few.
Okay, cool. Thanks. I'll see you in a few minutes. Thunder Parley, California gubernatorial Why do they call it a gubernatorial Another conversation.
Because we're a bunch of goobers, I guess.
Probably.
Right?
Yeah, exactly.
Language is funny.
It surely is. Well, that's another show, no time. All right, brother. Well, I'll see you backstage. All right, folks. California gubernatorial candidate Thunder Parley. That was really very informative, and I hope you guys got something out of that. And I would encourage you to go check out his website. And whether you agree with him or not, or whether you vote for him or not, at least take a look at the proposals that are out there. They're common sense. They really are. So it's important. All right. Shout outs to our producing team, executive producers, Wayne Rankin, Rosanna Rankin, Caroline Eminez, Marissa Lee, and the inestimable anonymous Angela. Now, these folks donate their time, their talent, their treasure. That's the 3 T's that we talk about all the time. And if you want to help us out, you want to donate to us, you can donate your time, your talent, your treasure. We call it the value for value model. So if you're receiving anything of value from the content we're putting out, we're asking you to return that value in the form of a donation. And even if it's $1, 50 cents, whatever it might be, whatever the content, whatever the value to the content you feel it is for yourself, send it to us. We appreciate that. And there are plenty of ways to do it. You can go to our website, joerooz.com/support. Maybe it'll come up. I don't know. There it is. All right, joerooz.com/support. And take a look. There's one-time donations. There's recurring donations. There's signing up for our producing team. An associate producer is $17.76 a month. And producer is $18.36 a month. And, of course, our executive producer is $25 a month. All the producers get the shout-out, just like you just heard. You get included in all of our show notes. You get all those little perks. And executive producers, you get to actually come on the show with us and spend some time with us and have a conversation. That's what we do on our Wednesdays with Wayne segment. Wayne is one of our executive producers, and he has a segment that he likes to do about emergency preparedness, and that's what we do with Wayne every Wednesday. So make sure you check it out. All right, and again, just joerooz.com/support if you have the means and you are able to contribute. We would appreciate that. All right, how about some final thoughts here? Well, California is a warning sign for the rest of the country, a place of enormous wealth, enormous potential, and unfortunately, enormous dysfunction. Tonight, Thunder Parley laid out his case for practical reform. But, the bigger question remains whether any outsider can penetrate that political machine that is so entrenched in California. Voters are hungry for solutions and not slogans. I think tonight, Thunder laid out a number of really important solutions, and there's even more to check out on his website, so please make sure you go do that. Now, the question now is, who can convince him that this time is different? Who can convince the voters that this time is different? Very, very important. All right. Well, folks, I think that is going to do it for us for tonight. Thank you so much for being here with us. Please don't forget to go to the website, check out our contact section, send us over any questions, comments, cares, or concerns that you might have, and let us know what you think. Let us know about what you think about Thunder. We'd be happy to pass that on to him. And a lot of great stuff. Check it out. All right, folks, don't forget, make Texas independent again. Go podcasting. Keep a steady stride. And make sure, above all things, we keep talking. We'll see you next time. Have a great night.